Good morning, and thank you all for joining us today on the Course in Miracles with Dr. David Reinke, who's here with us today. We are doing a live Zoom podcast on Anchor.fm and Spotify across the country and the internet. And we are here live, Facebook. Uh, uh, yeah. Okay, anyway, I'm lost for words. But anyway, we are here today and we're going to discuss the workbook lesson number 15 in the Course in Miracles, and I'll turn it over to Dave.
Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. We're in the workbook for students, in case Donald didn't make that clear. So we're starting with lesson 15 of the workbook for students, and we're going to turn it over to Dave, otherwise known as the Wright brothers' new fan down in North Carolina.
Thank you. You know, I can't read the text. We have to adjust it.
Okay. Can you fix the text for him?
1 second.
He's fixing
Yeah,
it.
I'm waiting for Al to pop in.
Al is coming on board.
Oh.
There he is. All right. There we are.
He's here.
So, workbook lesson 15, paragraph 1. And I'll read the first 3 paragraphs as you suggested. So, my thoughts are images that I have made. It is because the thoughts you think appear as images that you do not recognize them as nothing. You think them, and so you think you see them. This is how your seeing was made. This is the function you have given your body's eyes. It is not seeing, it is image making. It takes the place of seeing, replacing vision with illusions. Scroll down, please. Okay, this introductory idea to the process of image making that you call seeing will not have much meaning for you. You will begin to understand it when you've seen little edges of light around the same familiar objects which you see now. That is the beginning of real vision. You can be certain that real vision will come quickly when this has occurred. And paragraph 3, as we go along, we may have many light episodes. They may take many different forms, some of them quite unexpected. Do not be afraid of them. They are signs that you're opening your eyes at last. They will not persist because they merely symbolize the true perception, and they are not related to knowledge. These exercises will not reveal knowledge to you, that they will prepare the way to it. So the first thing that comes to my mind is that we're probably seeing some sort of aura around objects once we get to that point. I occasionally see that around a tree.
Okay.
You know, if I look at a tree on a beautiful day, I can see some sort of aura around the tree pretty commonly.
Yeah.
It's almost like a foggy, I don't, there's not really a good word to describe it. It's translucent. I think it's a translucent kind of band around the tree that I see. And I've always thought that to possibly be the aura from the tree. But I also too mentioned some weeks ago that at one time I happened to be on a boat and had a peak experience and saw my shipmates as luminous as light. And so it's not, you know, probably not an unusual thing to have this happen. I was reading another book that with persistent meditation and study and paying attention that these light experiences are pretty common.
There's, thank you for sharing that. I'm thinking of Carlos Castaneda, who was, at the time of writing his first book, The Teachings of Don Juan, A Yaqui Way of Knowledge. That was his doctoral dissertation in anthropology from UCLA. And what's the name of the town in California that's known for hippies.
San Francisco.
San Francisco, whatever. And in any event,
Kate Alfred.
he talked about seeing people as luminous eggs. His terminology, luminous eggs, and so there weren't. It figured that you could easily identify it as a man or a woman, or as a boy or a girl, but rather, if you were seeing them, quote unquote, seeing, you see them as a luminous egg, and occasionally you might see little like unfolding arms that would come out, or legs, I suppose, that would represent what we would call an arm or a leg. So
How much LSD was it?
That is his description of it. In my own experience, I see, or I say I see, because I'm not sure if I'm seeing it or how it's getting to my occipital nerves, which is, I see little pinpoints of light. The first time I saw this pinpoint of light was when I was maybe 13 years old, and in a seance. I wasn't conducting the seance, but I was there in one, pitch black, and it was a brilliant white light in the middle of a pitch black room. And on the way home, I asked my parents, who were the ones that drove me. It was always a 2-hour trip. We were going from Blooming Grove, New York, which is near Chester, New York, if you happen to know where that is, all the way to Connecticut. Can't remember the name of the town, but it was a good 2-hour drive because there was no 190, no 95 at that time. Anyway, I asked them, "What did you think of that light?" And they said, "What light?" I said, "Did you have your eyes open?" "Yes," was the answer. I said, "How could you miss it? It was right in front of you." Well, so that was the first time I had a clue that I was seeing something that other people weren't seeing. And that persists till today, and now I'm a psychologist. And if I talk about seeing things like that, my colleagues will say, "Oh, we finally found out you're psychotic," and would interpret that kind of visual effect as a psychotic. It's the phone.
Sorry.
Okay. In any event, that is one of the things that I've had the experience of, and most recently, I did have an episode in which I saw someone who I knew I was not looking at the person himself. I had in fact been looking for him inside of a building which I couldn't go into because of the COVID in the building. So then the next thing, he pokes his head up, but I saw him just the way he was when he poked out his head. And I saw him before that, full, the full Monty, to use that term. So what do you make of that? Well, maybe that's what's being described here. You may have many light episodes, and they are signs that you're opening your eyes at last. So what certainly seems to be presented here so far is that our eyes do in fact deceive us. Or to put it slightly differently, we will add our interpretation, but we don't realize we're adding our interpretation to what we see. It's as if we're adding a commentary to what we see, so that in fact, we don't actually receive the signal of what we actually saw, but we receive a commented upon signal, and therefore changed signal. Anyway, let's move on. Al, any thoughts from you? Can you hear us? Is not talking.
No, I could hear you. Yep.
All right. Any thoughts on those first three paragraphs?
You know that we're repeating last week's lessons, right?
That's all right.
Okay, all right. I didn't know because we were on 17, but that's
All right, we're gonna crank up to. So we're gonna actually it doesn't make a difference.
it's okay. It doesn't, I just I know David wasn't here, so we can repeat this.
Good stuff.
No, that it's interesting. What we're saying is that in a Christian sense, one of the interpretations of helping the blind to see was this entire idea of getting the ability to ignore what we think we see and try to see what the underlying reality is, what God created, what God sees, and that. So there is that whole allegory too, in the biblical sense. So far so good.
Yeah.
It just crossed my mind. I wonder if, when we're domesticated as children, and we're taught, this is a ball, this is a dog, and we're when we answer appropriately, we're rewarded for seeing something that there's consensus about.
Yes.
So I wonder if we aren't in some way being programmed as children to see what other people see. So there's a commonality to it. It would be very impractical for a youngster living in this culture to see anything in terms of, or see everything in terms of light or auras or that kind of thing. They, in order for us to function, we have to have something in common with the people that we live with. And so we're given a set of standards. If we said to our parents, that isn't a ball, it's a light that has certain characteristics, they would not approve of that.
Right.
And so we see it the way they see it.
Yeah, we're being socialized. We're being. Who was the Russian dude? I can't think of his name. But we're basically Pavlov. There it is. Pavlov's dog was taught to drool when he would hear a bell go off, and the training consists of blowing meat powder into his face while they were showing a picture of a ball, and so then he became sensitized to, ball equals something to salivate over, and sure enough, so we are trained rats, you might say, in this experience. So.
Well, one effect of neurology, the way our brains work, is not only do we amplify signals that we deem good, proper, but we also suppress those signals that are erroneous, are supposedly erroneous, right? So the brain works on both aspects. And so, the neuronal impulses, right, are either amplified or they're suppressed, they're blocked. And so what you said, Dave, is I'm thinking to myself, that's probably exactly what's taking place. And because we're socialized to negate or suppress those negative kinds of images that are deemed antisocial, like ghosts or aliens or whatever. You think of something that we as a society or a culture, just to unilaterally dismiss as absurd. So we're taught from a very early age, to ignore or even to to suppress those kinds of impulses, images, visions. So if you're having visions, even in the church, people have visions all the time, and the first thing is that they don't send you to make you a saint. At first, initially they think you're insane, and they send you to the psychiatrist to see if there's anything neurologically wrong with you. I was watching that whole thing on Saint. Well, she's becoming a saint. Sister Faustina. The Divine Mercy. She used to see images of Jesus, and supposedly Jesus dictated her the Divine Mercy prayer. And there was a whole special on her life, and she was ridiculed. She was denounced, at the beginning. So you're absolutely right. So those gifts are probably something that we may have, all of us, but they're suppressed from a very early age.
Yeah, I think that's true, Al.
It's as if when we come to this planet, we're recycling, a la the Buddhists, or we're just newcomers, and we're basically being said, if you want to live here, buddy, here's the rules. You gotta straighten up and fly right, meaning according to our rules, and you can't be a spirit no more. Dave, you texted me something the other day, which I've been thinking about. Is that you wanted to see everyone as a spirit, and so I think here it is. We're earthatized spirits. We're homebound spirits. We have seen the light, and we've been shown the door. and better not see the light anymore. In effect, if we want to live on this planet.
So are you saying living on this planet is a punishment?
Well, I'm not saying it's a punishment. I think it's a consequence of coming into the atmosphere.
Well, no, I might be very culture oriented as well. It seems like historically we seem to go through periods where stuff like that is normal. Seeing spirits, seeing ghosts, seeing the dead, talking with supernatural kinds of forces. That's normal. That's every day. In some cultures, it's you're rewarded for having that ability. Just seems maybe now it's really suppressed. And I know for recovery, this is one of getting in touch with those quote unquote higher powers is almost a prerequisite. It really for anybody in recovery, it really behooves individuals to try not to just ignore that entire realm of possibility, but to sort of explore it. It's I know in my case it is really helpful. But yeah,
Well, and curiously, the New Testament, particularly the teachings that St. Paul talked about. He talked about the gifts of the Spirit in Corinthians 11, 12. He said there's 9 gifts of the Spirit. And of course, he either didn't know or he ignored the literature, which was manifest on how many cities, let's say DDHI apostrophe S cities, there are, according to Patanjali, Petanjali, in his book Yoga Sutras, Sutras, that there are hundreds of cities, and that those people who lived in India, who lived in Nepal, who lived in Japan, have been practicing them for years. and we're sort of Johnny come lately when it comes to this, but better late to the game than never. And to realize that when the psalmists talk about God as spirit and those who worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth, it wasn't kidding. And it didn't mention also that we are spirit.
Do you think Christianity was based on a fear of punishment mostly?
Well, I don't think initially it was. I mean, I might have gotten around to the issue of punishment, but the supposed impetus for the new age of Christianity was the resurrection of Jesus, wherein the supposedly dead body was seen to be walking around and talking to people, and here, stick your finger in my hand, stick your fist in my side, and
I
that's
guess
very new.
like talking about the establishment.
Well, there wasn't any establishment yet. The establishment then
Yeah, I know.
was Judaism, but
Yeah.
of course every
When it came around to being an established
Yeah,
church,
well,
they used punishment
sure.
as
think of Martin Buber, Buber, who's an excellent person to read. You'll hear about I and thou, and you'll um, deal with those issues of the hierarchy and so on. So the fact is, we have already incorporated, and we don't even know it. That's what the Course in Miracles, I think, is really saying to us. You've been acclimated, you've been prospected, you've been educated, and you don't even know the result of that. And now you're finding out that it includes even things you say you see, and it turns out you don't see them. Or
Yeah, I think I told you guys earlier. I've been doing a lot of like web conferences with this group from California, uh, California Institute for CIIS. I don't remember the acronym, but apparently there's a movement now in this country. It's really gaining some steam where they're looking at the therapeutic uses of psilocybin, the magic mushrooms, these alternative kinds of therapies where they're finding that not only do they have ancient spiritual power, but they're finding that psychologically they're extremely beneficial to help people with treatment resistant depression or a host of, a whole host of other kinds of conditions. And I guess there's movements in different states. I'm not sure what Massachusetts is, or Florida for that matter, but some states have, it's legal to actually use some of these substances. Um, and if I guess there's practitioners.
yeah,
So all these ancient practices that you're speaking about, uh, sort of coming full circle around where they're being studied for actually the incredible utility they provide.
it happens. You guys have heard me before, but others may have not. That one of my dearest teachers at Andover Newton Theological School, which is now at Yale University in New Haven, um, Walter Houston Clark was the professor of the psychology of religion, and I can thank him for his introduction to this whole thing for me, along with my parents. But in terms of marrying it to a theological education, thank you, Walter Houston Clark. And also Timothy Leary. Those guys were partners. Timothy Leary, the guy you hear about, Dr. Timothy Leary, LSD Leary, was the partner of my professor at Andover Newton, which is probably why he got him fired, I think, eventually. But so that was the the point. And back then we were offered LSD as an experiment if we wanted under medical supervision. I chickened out because I didn't want to get a shot in the butt, which probably wouldn't have hurt, but I think it was just my way of saying, I don't want the experience. So I didn't have it. And in fact, I've never done LSD. I've done other things, but not that one. Anyway, moving along, shall we go to number 4? And I'll read that. In practicing the idea for today, repeat it first to yourself and then apply it to whatever you see around you, using its name and letting your eyes rest on it as you say, this blank is an image that I have made. That blank is an image that I have made. It is not necessary to include a large number of specific subjects for the application of today's idea. It is necessary, however, to continue to look at each subject while you repeat the idea to yourself. The idea should be repeated quite slowly each time. And then number 5, although you will obviously not be able to apply the idea to very many things during the minute or so of practice that is recommended, try to make the selection as random as possible. Less than a minute will do for the practice periods if you begin to feel uneasy. Do not have more than 3 application periods for today's idea unless you feel completely comfortable with it, and do not exceed 4. However, the idea can be applied as needed throughout the day. That's the end of that particular, and I want to comment on periodically throughout this workbook for students, there's don't do this for more than a minute or 2, and if you feel, it doesn't say nauseous, it might as well say that, then stop or whatever. I mean, this sounds like a doctor's prescription. Think about it, doesn't it sound that way to you? That someone has thought about this sufficiently that it's telling you, don't think about this for more than a minute. What would happen if you thought about it for more than a minute? Or what would happen if you thought about it less than a minute? Interesting question.
We become very compulsive about
The way I
how
look at
we
it,
do things.
oh, sorry, Dave. No, I was thinking to myself, the way I look at it now is that the reason why a lot of this is important for me, and this is just my own personal experience, is that I think of it as a man in the desert, suffering from dehydration, and off in the distance, the person thinks they see an oasis or a drinking well, and presumably that person would waste the rest of their energy trying to get to that water well, to save themselves. But in reality, it's a mirage, right? The whole thing is a fantasy. The whole thing is an illusion. It doesn't exist, but the person thinks it's real. Now, if the person could see through that, they could recalibrate their course and use the energy that they have left to actually go to a real well, a real source of water, something that actually does really exist to save themselves. And so their fate would be completely changed. And I kind of think of a lot of these exercises and sort of keep bringing me to to this point in my recovery where I can sort of look at these things and see, those things that are real and not, and how much of energy and utility I've wasted on all of this stuff that I thought was so important. Turns out it's not important at all. So yeah, so that's how I kind of look at this stuff now. It really is important to do this.
Yeah, it is. And it's interesting to me because I every week I have a dream study group at the House of Hope, which is in New Bedford, Massachusetts. It's a recovery house, and we spend a lot of time talking about the things that got them into the recovery house to begin with. You know, what was it that got you here? Was it drugging or drinking or both? Or what was it that brought you here? And yeah, it was those things, but it was also buying into an illusion. The illusion is, well, if I have a nice drink or two or three, I'll feel better. I'll be better. I'll be different. Or if I do this drug or that drug, I'll see things differently. It'll be more fun. Life will be more fun, whatever it is. And so we go down that garden path only to get hooked. Well, so this is basically the Course in Miracles attempt to get us unhooked from those things which addict us. And apparently it's not just substances, it's thoughts. We're addicted
Yep.
by thoughts.
In
So
the jargon of today, it's taking the red pill, not the blue pill in the Matrix. You're
yes.
taking the red pill here.
Al, you want to start with lesson number 16? I have no neutral thoughts.
Sure, I have no neutral thoughts. The idea for today is a beginning step in dispelling the belief that your thoughts have no effect. Everything you see is the result of your thoughts. There is no exception to this fact. Thoughts are not big or little, powerful or weak. They're merely true or false. And those that are true create their own likeness. And those that are false make theirs. Gonna have to move it a little bit. Okay. I can switch my screen and go to my background here. Okay. Those that are false make theirs. There is no more self-contradictory concept than that of idle thoughts. What gives rise to the perception of a whole world can hardly be called idle. Every thought you have contributes to truth or to illusion. Either it extends the truth or it multiplies illusions. You can indeed multiply nothing, but you will not extend it by doing so. Besides, you're recognizing that thoughts are never idle. Salvation requires that you also recognize that every thought you have brings either peace or war, either love or fear. A neutral result is impossible because a neutral thought is impossible. There is such a temptation to dismiss fear thoughts as unimportant or trivial and not worth bothering about, that it is essential you recognize them all as equally destructive, but equally unreal. We will practice this idea in many forms before you really understand it. Do you want me to continue?
Please do.
Okay. In applying the idea for today, search your mind for a minute or two with eyes closed and actively seek not to overlook any quote unquote little thought that may tend to elude the search. This is quite difficult until you get used to it. You will find that it is still hard for you not to make artificial distinctions. Every thought that occurs to you, regardless of the qualities that you assign it, is a suitable subject for applying today's idea. In the practice periods, first repeat the idea to yourself, and then as each one crosses your mind, hold it in awareness while you tell yourself, this thought about blank is not a neutral thought. This thought about blank is not a neutral thought. This thought about my electric fan is not a neutral thought. As usual, use today's idea whenever you are aware of a particular thought that arouses uneasiness. The following form is suggested for this purpose. This thought about that guy with the lawnmower back there making a lot of noise is not a neutral thought because I have no neutral thoughts. 4 or 5 practice periods are recommended if you find them relatively effortless. If strain is experienced, 3 will be enough. The length of the exercise period should also be reduced if you find any discomfort, or if there is any discomfort.
Isn't that interesting? Reduce the exercise instead of extending it. You want muscles, man, work out longer, work out harder. No, this one says work out less. I find that fascinating. Well, any thoughts? I think it sounds pretty.
Well, I think for me, it was, and it's still different, especially when I get emotional about, a particular situation or relationship or, to sort of put all that in perspective. Um, so it definitely, I find it's definitely, this is practice. That entire idea that, my thoughts are not neutral. So even when I try to, take away the emotional power or the quote unquote importance or even triviality of my thoughts, to actually realize that every single one of them has uh, being. I remember reading this book about uh, Buddha, I guess, and towards the end of his before he was totally enlightened, I guess he was developed a practice where he was examining every single thought that he had. Uh, I think I showed you, that was a few years back when we were meeting in person, and I showed you the book, and there was this section, and I said, "This is what they're doing." This is it was a Buddhist practice, um, and like what the Buddha was saying is that whenever he felt that he was having a negative or a non-positive or a non-loving loving the world kind of thought, that he would grab onto it and change it, so that he wanted to be on that beam where he sort of controlled his thoughts so that everything in his mind and in his world was one of love and positivity, which so I thought that was really, really interesting. I never really believed that thoughts had that much power over me.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Yeah, and it strikes me, of course, being a psychologist, that if you're having psychotherapy with someone, what is one of the things that's going to happen? You're going to have to change your mind, which is another way of saying change your thoughts. You're going to have to change your mind about psychotherapy, or you're going to have to change your mind about your mother or your father or yourself or your aunt or your uncle. Any number of relationships uh, gets reevaluated in the process of psychotherapy. And so this is really a psychotherapeutic practice that's being taught to us. Shall we move on to lesson 17?
You're here.
I can read if you wish, or I don't know whose turn it is.
It's your turn.
Okay. I see no neutral things. This idea is another step in the direction of identifying cause and effect as it really operates in the world. You see no neutral things because you have no neutral thoughts. It is always the thought that comes first, despite the temptation to believe that is the other way around. This is not the way the world thinks, but you must learn what it is, the way you must learn that it is the way that you think. If it were not so, perception would have no cause and would itself be the cause of reality. In view of its highly variable nature, this is hardly likely.
Yeah, it's
17.2. Applying today's idea, say to yourself with eyes open, I see no neutral thoughts because I have no neutral thoughts. Then look about you, resting your glance on each thing you note long enough to say, I do not see a neutral blank because my thoughts about blank are not neutral. As usual, it is essential to make no distinctions between what you believe to be animate or I'm okay. Let's see.
That's the whole thing on number 5, for example.
Okay, for example, you might say, I do not see a neutral wall because my thoughts about walls are not neutral. I do not see a neutral body because my thoughts about bodies are not neutral. As usual, it is essential to make no distinctions between what you believe to be animate or inanimate, pleasant or unpleasant. Regardless of what you may believe, you do not see anything that is really alive or really joyous. That is because you are unaware as yet of any thought that is really true and therefore really happy. So that's profound enough to think about. You know, we don't know. Go back up just a little bit. There you are. We don't really know. Can you go down? Can you scroll up, Donald? Just a bit there. It's because you are unaware as yet of any thought that is really true and therefore really happy. So it's telling me that I've got a long way to go if I have no clue at all what's going to make me happy or what's going to make me serene.
Just finish off the last little paragraph.
Okay. 3 or 4 specific practice periods are recommended, and no less than 3 are required for maximum benefit, even if you experience resistance. However, if you do, the length of the practice period may be reduced to less than the minute or so that is otherwise recommended.
So does that mean that every true thing is happy? Number 3?
Good question. When you find out, please let us know.
That hasn't necessarily been my experience.
That's one of those thoughts that weren't true that you thought were true.
Well, if you're happy and you know it, clap your hands.
And there you go. So I'm while we're got the workbook for students in my left hand, in my right hand is Richard Smalley's book Inner Christianity. Kathy and I had the opportunity to meet and be with him for a period of about 6 months, spread out on monthly meetings at the Course in Miracles, not the Course in Miracles, but the group that we were part of. There's on the screen in case anybody wants to find out how to get a hold of it. You can go to Amazon if you have access to it. Richard Smalley, Smoley, has written a lot of books, and this is certainly one of them. I'm looking at pages 75 to 77, and he is talking about the 2 great commandments. What responsibilities does salvation entail? Nearly the entire New Testament, including the sayings of Christ and the writings of Paul, stresses to the point of redundancy that it is not a matter of the law of merely following the rules. At the same time, there are principles, PLES, to be observed, summarized in the 2 great commandments: to love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy mind, and to love thy neighbor as thyself. In regard to the first, God's love and mercy are beyond measure and are extended to all indiscriminately. And secondly, the great commandment to love your neighbor as yourself. For an individual, salvation is a beginning of the reversal of the fall. And so I think that's really a very neat way of describing these lessons that we're reading now in A Course in Miracles. This is the reversal of the fall. We are now becoming conscious of who we are, how we operate, what our very thoughts conclude and lead us to do, if only we were tuned into them. So I would certainly highly recommend that you read Richard Smalley. He does in his book frequently discuss the workbook for students in A Course in Miracles and so on. He calls his book Inner Christianity a guide to the esoteric traditions. And so what you're getting here, in case you have questions about A Course in Miracles, is this is a part of what Smalley would call the esoteric tradition, meaning not the stuff that you would normally get by going to church, because you're going to get the establishment principles. This is what you get when you get with your own teacher or teachers or guides who help you to look behind the scenes and to find books like this that keep you going. I would certainly count in this frame Richard Smalley. I would also count Carl Jung, my hero in psychology. And so anything that takes us from any everyday consciousness to a particular awareness of who we are, what we're doing, and our place in the world is something that is well worth the energy to look at it, and we can begin, as he says here, individual salvation is the beginning of the reversal of the fall. And then to go on at some level, however unconscious, it involves the realization that you are not separate from the other human beings, but share something vital with them. Thus, you love your neighbor as yourself because essentially your neighbor is yourself. And on it goes. So I highly recommend that you get a hold of that.
You know, I've been reading that book, off and on now for several weeks. And one of the quotes in there, I can't tell you the chapter necessarily where he quotes this, but he summarized it very briefly in one chapter there where he said that the essence of religion is a personal relationship with God. That's the heart of the matter right there. The rest, I think, gets us there. And as it relates to my own personal experience, as a child, I was taught that God is an angry father, essentially, an angry father who takes revenge and punishes us, for misdeeds. And that whole perception of God, after I've been through years of therapy and years of working on the course, is wrong. God, I was taught essentially wrong. I'm not blaming, I'm just being realistic about it. I was taught that God was an angry and psychotic being in the, bringing down thunder and lightning and fire and brimstone. And that whole, and in order to get to the point where I can understand that as faulty thinking, or we could even call it stinking thinking, is I had to stop and think what I was thinking about.
Mm.
It was this really true? Is God really an angry, vicious person, or an angry, vicious spirit, or is God a God of love? I was getting mixed signals as a child. I did not have a lot of discrimination in what I absorbed. So I can understand where the course is going here. Pay attention to your thinking.
Yeah.
That's the key.
And it affects your behavior, and it affects your entire worldview. And these practices, try to undo that that terrible socialization. I've been reading this, looking at the history of like the Aztecs, and these cultures that were vicious culture. There's apparently uh, they would have these rituals where they would literally tear the heart out of their sacrifices to their gods, with the person, still alive, and they would drink the blood. And there was this one author was sort of contemplating the idea that the reason why the Spanish could actually conquer them is that the other tribes that the Aztecs had conquered, were so revolted by their practices that they actually sided with the Spanish to defeat them. And so, like what you just described is extremely important, because if we're taught, a false kind of God, um, our entire life, our entire worldview gets turned into we behave that way. The entire cultural behavior becomes sort of centered around those belief systems.
Exactly. Exactly. I'm just reading Al talking about belief systems more from Richard Smalley. He's writing a little piece on the pearl of great price, which is one of the parables of Jesus. And this is what he has to say about what we're doing right now. He says, unlike salvation, gnosis, and if you don't know how gnosis is spelled, I'll spell it for you. It's Gnosis, which roughly translates into wisdom or knowledge, more wisdom than knowledge. So unlike salvation, gnosis is not available to all for the asking. It is rare, it is precious, and even those who seek after it rarely receive it fully. There are few reliable guideposts. So if you're on this call, count yourself lucky. I don't mean to be patting anybody on the back, least of all myself, but what I'm saying is that you are getting some gnosis, some wisdom, some knowledge right now. And if you let this go, you're the one who's losing, and those who know you, which includes us now. There are few reliable guideposts. The teachers of the present and the texts of the past offer valuable clues, but the way is completely individual and may manifest itself very differently for one person than for another. If some seem to attain it spontaneously by grace, I'm thinking of Eckhart Tolle, for example, others may work and study for a lifetime only to remain at the outer gates. If this seems unjust, it may be helpful to remember that attaining gnosis does not ward off the terrible fate of damnation. It is salvation offered freely and at no cost that provides this help. Gnosis is simply a means of attaining the highest knowledge of God possible in this life. It does not confer any special reward. It is its own reward, and those who seek after it do so only because it is the deepest longing of their being, which nothing else will satisfy. Christ likens it to a pearl of great price, where a merchant sold all that he had to buy. To see how gnosis differs from salvation, then he goes on to the whole difference between gnosis and salvation. But I would try to sum that up in a couple of words, difficult as it is for me to do that, which is in print. Well, we'll use his book as an example. His is a justified page in Richard Smalley's book, Inner Christianity. It's justified on the right side of the page and it's justified on the left, meaning all the letters end at the same place on both sides. Some books only justify one side. So that is also, the word justify is also the word for salvation. We are justified. What are we justified by? By faith. Faith in what? Faith in Christ. Faith in God. We're justified. That's the justification. Now we know we're saved, to use another term. That's salvation. I know I'm saved. I know that my Redeemer lives. And I have a personal relationship with him. That's justification. Sanctification is what Richard Smalley is talking about. That's the gnosis. That's the wisdom. That's the stuff that takes forever to get. and you've got some packages of it right here. We've got it in A Course in Miracles and the Workbook for Students. And gnosis is that which we will enhance and enlighten and embellish the justification that we experienced. And then I'll just read one last quote here. He quotes Francis de Sales, S-A-L-E-S. I'm not sure I'm saying that right. Might be Francis de Sales. A Catholic spiritual teacher of the early 17th century observes, a man is rich in spirit if his mind is filled with riches or set on riches. The kingfisher shapes its nest like an apple, leaving only a little opening at the top, builds it on the seashore, and makes it so solid and tight that although waves sweep over it, the water cannot get inside. Keeping always on top of the waves, they remain surrounded by the sea and are on the sea, and yet they are masters of it. Your heart must in like manner be open to heaven alone and impervious to riches and all other transitory things. So that's what keeps us talking. You know, how long have we been doing this? For a long time, because there's always one more thing to learn. But that's the riches of sanctification. We find out, you know, the many wines that are available on the market. Well, I live in Tiverton, Rhode Island, and we have 3 or 4 or 5 vineyards within a 5-mile radius of this place. And so if you happen to be someone who enjoys wines, you can go, we've got one right here. You can go to your local vineyard and get their whatever that they're selling these days. Or if you're a connoisseur of wines, you can go to the orchards of France or maybe the West Coast, and you can start drinking those things. But so you become a cognoscenti. You become one who is aware of the different flavors, the different which one has a different nose. You see all these words we use to describe something that is ephemeral and doesn't last, but we treasure it. And that's what I'm talking about here. Is that we are wordsmiths, and a wordsmith likes words. I never thought I'd hear myself say that, but it's true. I'll like words. I like words. You know, and this is particularly ironic for me because my parents had a real tough time getting me to open my mouth about anything. You know, the silent Dave they call me. Now you can't shut me up. So you have to answer the question which was better. I don't know, but in any event, once you begin to taste of these vineyards, you want more. What can I say? You become an addict in a good way, and so it becomes a part of who you are. You know. Anyway, I rattle on.
I like the way Donald stops on, listen to David read the lesson.
Yeah, I'd like to share something with you guys. It doesn't matter, doesn't connect directly with the lesson, but every day it seems, or every now and again, I get some sort of inspiration or enlightenment. And my wife and I have been down here on the Outer Banks now for almost a week. And there's a church, a Catholic church. It's actually more of a chapel. And it's Our Lady of the Sea chapel. You know, being an island, this whole area is just completely connected to the sea. Everything is about the water. And I realized that for most of my life, I've been a Marian. I never understood it really. But I would venerate Mary. And part of it, I think, was because I'm so attached to the sea myself, you know. But then I ran across something that's probably not orthodox, but before Mary was, in pagan times, Mary was the goddess of the sea. You know, then the Christians appropriated her and made her the mother of God. Totally unorthodox, but it makes sense to me, you know. And in Latin, mar is ocean or sea. So mari would be sea-like or ocean-like. So it's sort of a step for me to come to understand that I have that connection with the Spirit of Mary, and it happened just in driving by a church.
Wow. Huh.
That's
Fantastic.
really interesting.
Yeah, huh, that's great. Well, the reason I like living near the ocean is for much the same reasons. I'm not relating it so much to Mary, although I have seen her. I actually have seen her as a blue mist when I was talking to a patient in a nursing home, and he was about to die, and I said to him, "You have company." And he looked and he could see her. And he said, "She's waiting for you." And he happened to be Catholic. And so it was very meaningful for him. Uh, for me, the sea itself is a representation of the sea of eternities, of the Holy Spirit. That's how I relate to it. And so I would rather be at the seashore than anywhere else. Not in the water, mind you.
Really?
Not in the water, because my wife is always
That's a
trying to
new
get me
one.
to swim, but you
Give him a drive there.
can admire it from close
Get
up.
to the beach. Oh, really?
You see, there's one thing about looking at it and being in it. It's a different thing.
The first thing on that next chapter, it says, I am not alone in experiencing the effect of my seeing.
Yeah, yeah,
So you're not alone, Dave.
guess not. Yeah. So,
We're gonna continue.
do we want to continue, guys? We'll go by your vote. We can continue, or we can call it.
Well, I gotta get going because he wants to get some errands done.
All right. Dave, ready to call?
Yeah, I think I need to. My wife's coming back from the beach. She's a beachcomber,
Oh, okay.
and she's spent most of the weather has been so harsh that the waves have been so hard. It's hardly, you can't pick up shells when you're getting constantly pummeled by waves. So she'll be back shortly.
All right.
You know, I did want to add one thing. As long as we're digressing, we were talking about not seeing what's really there, and it occurred to me I had an example of that this morning. One of my favorite breakfasts is what I call a waffle dog, which is a hot dog and a waffle, for breakfast. And I usually cook up a dozen hot dogs, Frankfurters, and maybe eat one or two of them, and then put them in the fridge in the refrigerator in a Ziploc bag, so that I can, the next time I want a waffle dog or a hot dog, I grab it out of there. So I was this morning looking for the hot dogs, looking for the Frankfurters, and I was looking for Frankfurters in a Ziploc bag. What my wife had done is put them in a small square plastic container, and so they were right in front of my nose, but I couldn't see the hot dogs because it wasn't what I expected to see.
Yep.
It's so example of we don't see what's right in front of us.
And our expectations get in the way. Look at that.
Yeah.
I got two things. There's one, I got a question about House of Hope. Are they allowing new people to go in? Dave?
Yes, they are.
Okay, because I mentioned them in a meeting I was in, and the second thing was about vaccines. If does anybody need vaccines? They're giving out some vaccines today, and I think Saturday or Sunday at two places in Fall River, the Pfizer. So if anybody does anybody need a vaccine? I can send you information on it.
Offering to needle her endlessly, but
Can I stop recording these so we can?
yeah, he's gonna stop.
I'm just going to stop recording. I just want to say thank you, everyone, for joining us on live Facebook. Course in Miracles of Workbook Lessons. Next week, we will continue on lesson number 18. If you have any questions, please contact David. You can send him an email at drdavidhreinke@outlook.com. That's Dr. David H. Reinke at outlook.com. You can send an email and ask him any questions you'd like about our services every Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you all for joining us, and I hope you all have a lovely day.
Yeah, we got to get Donald to stop participating, and so you can be on Zoom meetings getting recorded.
This is the first time I've been in the workbook lessons, and I'm not too familiar with them, so I'm still learning, and that's why I'm saying it.
Yeah, but we need some new blood here. We're like old timers here.
Yeah. Well, this is like
Anyway, so do you guys you do need a vaccine? I don't know. Now the only thing is I don't know if that would be helpful for Rhode Island residents. You know what I mean? This might be for Fall River people.
Way to get on. We'll probably do that in the next half hour so that she can,
Thank you.
although I've offered to stick her with many things,
Yeah.
uses that for some reason.
I know how conservative you guys are, so I figured you would be vaccine resistant.
So at least you get the point. That's what you
Yeah.
need to do.
Yeah, I like the way the British call it. They call it the jab.
Yeah.
They always have a humor.
Time for me to go.
All right, Dave. It's good to
I
see
will
you.
see you guys
Take
next
care.
week.
It's supposed to be kind of cold there today, boy. I'll tell you.
It's 57.
Yeah,
it was snowing here today.
Yeah,
Al.
what?
that's what Trish was saying. I lined her up. I had her on all kinds of lists, but this one I went online and then registered her, and she got it in right away. This one today is at the Maplewood Senior Center. You go online, you can register, and then on Sunday is at the Fonseca School on Wood Street.
Are you back in Fall River now?
No, I'm still down here. I got one shot. This has been a disaster. This has been a terrible. This whole thing has been awful. They haven't even got the shuttle up and running yet. It's such a dichotomy of you got sort of one group of people that are just don't even care at all about vaccines. COVID. The whole thing's a hoax. And then you got another group of people that are like completely paranoid about it. Now they're talking about two strains that are combining together to be 4 times more virulent, and the vaccine's not going to be effective, and so you're going to have to keep the mask on, keep distance. You might have to go back into quarantine. It's like, what the? I mean, this is absolutely insanity. That's this entire process. And then you got so all the work I do, there's 2 groups of people. There's people who have been absolutely completely non-affected by all of the changes in the economy. As a matter of fact, they're actually doing a hell of a lot better, thank you very much. And then you got people that have been absolutely completely devastated by the economy. Their economic situation is actually catastrophic. They're losing everything, and supposedly all the help that they're supposed to be getting, they're not getting. I mean, it's unbelievable. So I got one shot. So my next shot is hopefully the shuttle starts in May. I mean, generally what I would do is I would come down here and I would fly back, several times during this entire period, to see my doctors and whatnot. I've been stuck here. I've been quarantined, and I don't want to take any chances with these guys. I mean, they're old. They're saying even with the vaccine, now he thinks he's immune now, right? So he wants to go out and gallivant and, do his thing. He's 90, 94, and he thinks he's, now he's got his vaccine, that nothing's going to affect him. And I'm trying to explain to him, listen, 2 things. Number one, even though you have the vaccine, you can still get the virus.
Yeah.
Right. And so you might not get it as seriously, but you can still get it. Number 2, even with the vaccine, you can go out there and because you're a schmuck, you're gonna contract it and you're gonna bring it back and you're gonna give it to me, and I'm gonna get sick and die. You know what I mean? Because you don't have any freaking clue about taking care of yourself, personal hygiene or anything else. I mean, this is like, so it's like, and he wants to get the hell out. He's going stir crazy. So yeah, this has been this, and they're like going through a divorce basically, so they're constantly fighting with each other, So it's like, I'm like the peacemaker in between, like, these two fighting factions of elderly that are, you know, this has been an incredible, and everything that I came down here for is like just falling through the freaking sewers. You know what I mean? It's like this has been, this has been a disaster. This whole thing. But anyway, yeah, I'm still actually I'm gotten so much busier the last couple of months. It's unbelievable. Like I said, I've been doing these webinars and I've been involved in all of these activities that are just unbelievable, mind-boggling. I guess one advantage that I've found for me, I don't know how much you're getting out of it, is that because of this remote virtual community kind of organizing and, that a lot of organizations that used to be you would have to attend in person, they're all online. So it's like, and they're opened up, so like you can do all these things that before would be very difficult, like all of those lectures and in California or like the Mass Historical Society or all these different things that used to be that it would be impossible to to try to attend. You can attend virtually, so it's and so the world opened up in a lot of ways as well. I mean, it's
Strange, huh?
yeah, it's really fascinating actually in a lot of ways. How much are we making any money on this yet?
Not yet that I know of. We're working on it though. There actually is a way to do it. Donald was telling me, but so
Well,
far
just put it all into Bitcoin. I guess Bitcoin is doing well, huh?
it's a bit of a Bitcoin.
All right, we'll see you.
All right, take
Take
care.
care. Stay safe.
You too. No, I can't get out of here because of this. All right, here we go.
Let me shut that off before the recording.